Welcome to episode 6 of Algorithmically Incorrect Hockey.
We've made it. I don't know what we've made it to, but we've made it somewhere, right?
We've made it to May. We've made it to month number 2, which feels like a big accomplishment.
Of the show. There is as I learned, because as I was going through this, there's two things I learned from there's two things I learned from looking at the back end of our site as I was prepping for this. One, there were 5 Wednesdays in April. Mm-hmm. So that's one thing I learned. And
that away for your Jeopardy appearance.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. And then if I go through and look through our back end of things, I can see the evolution of my beard on a week-to-week basis.
Do like the time lapse.
Yes. So it's because I mean, when I was working with DLLS, I never had I didn't look at the back end stuff. We had a producer that did that who was a real human being, and not whatever we have. So so it's so yes, it was. I could see the evolution of the beard from April 1st through end of April, and then I guess we can watch it again.
The summer is going to be very revealing, I think, in terms of your personal grooming habits for a lot of people.
It's the week over, because this is a set schedule, right? When I was doing front facing stuff with DLS before, it was very much the schedule was, hey, twice a week you're doing something. And it wasn't necessarily locked in stone. So sometimes it would be, I'd be on like Monday, Tuesday one week and not be on until like Friday, Saturday the following week or something like that. So it was, so this was.
It looked like you'd been down in a gold mine somewhere for 2 weeks by the time they saw you again, crawling out with like your beard.
Exactly. But we're here. We're doing this every week. We're back again. Really excited about the show this week. Got a couple fun things you and I are going to talk about. We got 2 guests. We'll get into it in a little bit, but we've got our first ever pre-recorded guest, because to make it work with that guest schedule, we did the interview earlier today. So if you're watching right now, eventually you will see a location change for me. That is pre-recorded, and we did our best to deliver on that, but I'm really excited about the guest on that. But before we get to anything like that, Robert, I think as we go through every show, and I just talked about some places having real life human producers, we have ourselves. And so let's go through, we've got some producer notes. I will let you, I'll let you lead off with your after your paper shuffle there.
Okay. First of all, our producer said that something we need to work on the YouTube channel is turning the live video archives into videos. I then asked the producer, what are you talking about? The videos are already there. You just go to the link or whatever. Apparently something with the algorithm, you need to turn the live archive, or you can turn it into videos. So if you've ever been to the YouTube channel and you can't find the videos, it's because you have to go to the live tab and look. But I think we'll figure it out and find a way to put them in the video tab too. I'm not too concerned about that, to be honest, but the producer brought it up, so I figured it was worth notating. The producer also actually, for once, had a positive note and said this is the first time ever that we can guarantee with 100% honesty that one of our guests was a fantastic interview, because it's already been done. And we actually know that. So I feel very good going into an interview where we already can guarantee the quality. I mean, we already always guarantee the quality. But this time we can really guarantee it.
Yes, I think that was definitely a good note. And that interview was fantastic, and will be fantastic for coming up for those listening. Yes, I think we will have to mess around with the video, the YouTube section, and we will get that properly oriented and organized and everything like that. My quick producer notes from the week have been the first one here is this is a positive. It's been really cool to see people we're not supposed to pat our back all the time, but we're doing it right now. It's been kind of cool to see the reception from some other people about the show. And it's been, obviously, there's people who listen to this show and watch this show and tell your friends and keep helping it grow. Please do that. But it's been really cool to one of our planned guests later today, not the pre-recorded one, someone who works for an NHL organization, and we went through and they went all the way up to their NHL GM to confirm that it was okay, and they got the green light from that. So I'm pretty happy with, I'm pretty happy with what we've been building here guest wise and everything. The other note I got production wise is it's important to remember that it's okay to, while we love our guests and everything, we still are putting a lot of energy and effort into the just Sean and Robert part, which people tend to enjoy as well. So I always forget how often that people are actually, if you're listening to this or watching this, you have no idea how much we appreciate you, because I don't realize how much people actually care what I have to say. I always am baffled at that.
Well, it's a credit to our booking agents
yes.
that it's easy for us, I think, to assume that we're the dimmer lights in the sky on any given show. And while I mean, I think most people would agree I'm usually a dim light of some kind, it's also the whole point of doing the show, the whole conception originally, and I think it's still the case, is you and I talking about parts of hockey that we think deserve it and are fun to talk about. So yes, it isn't all about the guests, even if the guests so far, due to the phenomenal work by booking, by our talent bookers, there's got to be a better word for that.
Booking agent.
Yeah, we'll stick with booking agent. Even if that's kind of been so good as to draw a lot of the attention, it's worth. Yeah, that's a good note to remember that we are technically the talent too. So
technically, and
try to remember that.
And from a talent note, I do know, because I've always gotten this perspective from people, and I know I tend to sometimes ramble in audio platforms. I don't have my editor. My editor is my brain, but it really only works when writing. I'm just going to be very clear about that. And I have, there's times I ramble on this show and other shows, and our pal Gavin Spittle's show, Spits and Suds. And I know some people don't like that. And so I want people to know, because I laugh at it, because it's my ability to, there's two parts of it. One, I will defend myself, because this isn't the easiest job, as fun as it is. There are some difficulties when it comes to just organizing thoughts in spoken form for me sometimes, and that's completely fine. And I've taken that feedback. I believe I listened to all that feedback, and I know it's something I'm working on and trying to get better on. So that's some self-reflection, and I'm willing to say that. And I appreciate the people who reach out respectfully and say it, as opposed to Twitter user with 7 numbers in their name and who tells me that I'm a horrible human. So
yeah, I should probably get a real Twitter account instead of using the burner. I'm sorry.
That's
fine.
On me.
I will say eye contact for me is a big, like, for quality of conversation. Actually being able to see someone makes a big difference for me. Anytime I've gone back and listened to like radio hits or whatever, it's a lot harder for me to like think things through clearly when it's just me and like holding my phone or something. So I totally sympathize on that front. It is a whole different skill to develop. And the people who we tend to see the most are the people who've been doing it the longest and who've done this literally for years and years and years. So it's fun to have a growth area, I guess. And I totally sympathize.
Oh yeah. And I have, I go through and I look at the element of that from the broadcast journalism spot. I'm at that age where you were still kind of getting into this field, and you were under the impression you could do one element of this field. It could be print. Like I always laugh. So when I went to school, the journalism majors, the 3 journalism majors were print, broadcast, and PR. And those were the three journalism majors. And while there was no requirement to take a broadcast class. There was you basically had to take something from the PR or broadcast track as well, but there was no requirement to take something from every track. So I took the one combo, like TV radio, and did one class in one semester with those comboed, and did and even that I was like, well, thank goodness I'll never have to do TV and audio work, because I hate this. Yeah. So I wish hindsight being 2020 for me, I would have loved to get a little more reps, a little bit more of that, but we're getting it on the fly and we figure it out here. And I think it's part of, and I'm doing it right now again, it's part of the free flowing thing where I think it kind of can come off both very human and very disjointed at the same time. So I appreciate people listening and enjoying the show. I wanted to, the other kind of producer note show I wanted to bring up. We talked last week at the end of the show about kind of how the Stars season might end. I wanted to give you, Robert, a high five, applause, whatever we call over this format of a tremendous season covering the Stars. And obviously we'll continue to cover that team into the off season, but just give you a ton of credit. And that's it for my producer notes.
Well, thank you. And I appreciate that. Once again, ambush of some credit, which you seem to enjoy slipping in there. And then I think we'll get a chance to talk later in the show about you maybe beginning some coverage of something too, which is also pretty exciting, but we'll save that for later. And for now, do you think we need to introduce who our first guest is going to be for everyone to hear? Because I'm pretty psyched about this.
Yeah, I'm really excited about our first guest. And so we're going to, if you're watching this right now, you're going to see a second intro when they are on screen, because this is
going to blow your mind.
Yeah, yes. This is pre-recorded. That's why location-wise, I want it.
They're the same people. They're not different people. It's us at a
Yes.
different time. It's not a different dimension. I know it's confusing.
And yes, we did record this from. I did record this from the 7th level of the parking garage in downtown Detroit,
this morning,
which seems to have better Wi-Fi than my house. So,
you just need to buy a 7-story house, and then you'll be in business. I'm pretty sure that's how Wi-Fi works.
Our guest, very excited. Our first guest today, you'll see a second intro for him, was Robert cues it up as I'm taking producer controls away from me. Very excited to bring in Bruce Boudreau, longtime NHL coach, the namesake for the Bruce Boudreau Award, represented annually now to the most outstanding AHL contracted player. Bruce joined us this morning. Really excited about this one. Great interview. Robert, take it away here.
All right, here you go. Enjoy. We'll be back after this clip, so don't think that this is it. And like Sean said, Bruce is a great interview. There's a reason his nickname was Gabby, still is, I guess. Really, really fun chat about a lot of things. So enjoy.
All right. We are happy to be joined today by Bruce Boudreau, longtime NHL coach and namesake of the Bruce Boudreau Award, which was the second one, was just announced this past week. The Bruce Boudreau Award, for those who don't know, is an award that goes to the most exemplary player on an AHL contract, and kind of represents what that league is all about. Robert and I's good pal Stephen Meserve is part of the brain trust that puts it all together, and been a really cool thing to see. And Bruce's name is attached to it. So Bruce, wanted to bring you on. First off, thanks for joining us, and then I've heard stories from Steven and from you. I wanted to hear, what did it mean to kind of, now that there is something when it's getting handed out annually now, there is the Bruce Boudreau Award. What's that mean to you?
It's really cool. It's really hard to put in words when somebody names something after you in a positive way. Like I've had things named after me in a negative way. That's not good. But in a positive situation like this, it makes you feel like, what you did, and people took notice, and it was a good career, and it was, especially for the American League guys. Sometimes they think, I never made it, but it's a very good league, and B, to make it long for the longevity at the American Hockey League level is quite a thing. You look back on it, and not many people get to that level. And especially if you can last at that level, and you're whether you're a star or not a star, it doesn't matter. And I look at last year's winner, he played in Detroit for the last 30 games of the season. So maybe it's got a little bit of good luck attached to it. And once you win this thing, people realize that you can play and that you're a good teammate. And I think if you weren't a good teammate, which was probably the most important thing to me, and gave it your all every day, then you don't get something like this. So absolute honor to have an award named after you, especially something like this, I think is really special for me.
Yeah, you mentioned last year's last inaugural winner was Dominic Shine, obviously a great story, who was someone who thought 2 or 3 years ago, thought he was going to be done with the game, and stuck with it, and played on an AHL deal for Grand Rapids, and scored his first career NHL goal this year. So you're right, there's some good momentum there where it's at. When you look at that kind of spot, and as you played obviously through the league, you played through the AHL, you kind of got your experiences there. What kind of appreciation did that give for you as a coach when it came to kind of the players and building a successful roster, on knowing that journey and how important those guys are, obviously, to the overall success of a team when you did see them in the NHL?
Well, it warms your heart. It's maybe a corny saying, but when I used to get guys at the NHL level that had played, just whether it's a call-up or a guy that's been there for a long time, and you call them up, I paid a little special attention to these guys, because I know what they'd gone through, and for the most part knew they probably could play in the NHL for a longer period of time, except for, I wouldn't say the word politics, but there's things that happen, whether you get to be a little older and then they say, well, we've got to go with the younger guy, or those kind of situations. I remember one in particular that was close to the heart. Brian Helmer, who's now the GM in Hershey, he was on an American League deal, and we needed a defenseman, and they didn't want to turn it into an NHL deal, but I insisted, and we got to call him up for 10 to 12 games, even though he played years before. He'd been in, and the biggest thing is he's told me is his kids never seen him play in the NHL. And I thought that was just a special moment when I could get him to the NHL, and guys that played Division III, like Keith Coyne, when they're playing and then they come up to your team, you try to give them extra ice time. You try to give them extra kudos because you know exactly what they're going through. And I went through it with Toronto. I think I was called up and sent down at least 15 to 20 times. And it's a great feeling when you get these older American League guys and they come in and they usually fit in really well because they know how to play. They're not just 21-year-old guys that are big or 21-year-old guys that can skate. They're guys that have played and have had to outlast everybody else by their fact that they're smart, good hockey players. So I'd love calling those guys up.
Why do you think some players are able to handle that going up and going down, or even waiting for a few years before they get another shot in the NHL? What do you think separates the players that are able to do that and able to, you mentioned being a good teammate earlier too. Is that just a mentality thing? Does it depend on where they came from, what coaches they've had? What enables some players to handle that and be that patient and wait for their shot and make the most of it when they get it?
Well, I think a lot of it is their upbringing, their stick-to-itiveness, and and the fact that they love the game, I think, is probably the biggest thing. I mean, there's a lot of guys that get their college education and at 24, okay, all of a sudden they think they're not going to make it in hockey, and they decide to try to go their other route from their education, and that's fine. But the guys that love the game want to play it forever. If I could have, I would still be playing. At my age, because you never want to quit, and those are the guys you admire. Because the guys that love the game will do anything to stay in the game, and those are the guys on the team. Their skills may have eroded a little bit as they get older, but I mean, those are the guys in the last minute, will block shots, will do all of the things that it takes to win, and they'll be the first ones cheering if somebody else does the same thing on the ice for your team, because it's all about team success for these kind of guys, and that's why my name being attached to this is really special to me, because that's what I think I was all about when I played.
Yeah, I was talking to I talked to Steven Meserve, who is the kind of the organizer behind this, runs 100 Degree Hockey, has covered the AHL for a long time, and their selection this year was Jason Megna. Obviously, Dominic Shine was the inaugural Jason Megna in Colorado, and Steven was telling me when they were looking at things, one of the things that stood out about Jason Megna was he's someone who had played some NHL games and everything like that, and had some potential opportunities maybe for NHL two-ways at some point in this year, but really committed to helping build and raise players up in Colorado with the Eagles and everything like that. And I think that's one of the, from a coaching perspective, you kind of talked about those guys building though up, but those personalities, I think those are the guys who, I always hate it in the social media world right now. Sometimes we'll see like a guy gets called up and there'll be the Twitter of, oh, who is that, or anything like that. But those are the guys who, as a coach, everyone in the organization who actually knows the team knows how much those type of guys have impacted those young guys that do become impact players someday, right?
Absolutely. Well, they knew about them because in training camp, they were probably one of the better players on the team, and they've been around, so they know a lot of the guys, and when they get sent down, and it used to be so important when you get sent down to have a great attitude, because so many young guys can go down with a real pissy attitude thinking, oh my, I'm sent to the American Hockey League, poor me. And these are the guys that go in and usually are the captains or an assistant captain on the team, and they take these guys and they help mold them. And so, I mean, it's they're the special guys, and they're the guys that the NHL team wants to see get called up. They really do. Like, I mean, it's amazing how when we would call up at any team that I'd been on, a guy that had been in the minors for a while, they instantly became, let's go, bring you out to dinner. You're the guy I want to hang with, because they're great people. They're not guys that have go up there at 21 and go, oh, geez, it's taken a long time. I'm better than this guy. I'm better than that guy. No, these are guys that are appreciative of where they are, and they probably want to stay in the game for a lot longer, just not through their hockey career, but they learn. They make great coaches. They make great management people. So yeah, I could see Magna being called up when Colorado's having a whole bunch of injuries, and those guys just embracing him and bringing him right into the fold, just like Shine did in Detroit.
Mm-hmm.
This is a little bit off topic, Bruce, but I've wanted to ask you this for a while. You were in Fort Wayne for a couple of years towards the end of your AHL time, and then you had a stint with Adirondack, I think, just for the playoffs, back over to the AHL from the IHL. What were the circumstances exactly of that had you come back for that playoff run? How hard did they have to convince you to come back for that? And what happened? Because I've always found that a little bit remarkable that you were able to come in and help them on their way to a championship for those games that you showed up for them right down the stretch there at the end of your playing days.
Well, what happened was the IHL back in 1993 was still considered like technically a tier lower than the American League, even though by that time the IHL had came up and was equal to the American League, because we had just as many number one affiliated teams as the American League team did. And unfortunately, the I at that point was trying to grow even faster and thought they could even, get into an expansion team thing with the NHL. But anyway, that being said, the Barry Melrose was the coach, who was one of my best friends, who we lived together in a number of the minor league spots. So the Detroit was running through a lot of injuries, and all the guys that they wanted on the team were actually called up. So they were allowed to call a guy up, and we had the best team in the International League, but we got beat out by Kalamazoo in 7 games. And so Barry gave me a call. And he said, "You want to come here for a game or two?" And I said, "Yeah, absolutely." So I jumped at it, and because their first round opponent was Springfield, which was great because I knew a lot of the people in Springfield, played there for a couple of years, and so went there, got a goal and a couple of helpers, I think, and then they went on to win a spectacular Calder Cup when not one team won a home game against St. John's. So it was pretty well, and they had such a good team because it was the beginning of the Detroit era of becoming really good.
Right.
And so, I mean, there was quite a few really good players, but the funny story was, what's his name? Murray was the GM. Forget his first name. Not Bob.
Brian, was it Brian Murray back
Brian
then?
Murray. Brian Murray was the GM, and he came down and he watched us play. I think I scored that game against Springfield, and he said, "What's that old fuck doing on this team?" And like, he really did. He says, "He's 38 years old and you're playing him over Mike Sillinger." I says, that ain't gonna happen. Get him out of here. So I mean, but it was I spent about 24 days down there, and it was a great experience.
What did your did you know always that coaching was going to be the next step for you? Like you're playing, you play through your 38, then you jumped in Muskegon as a head coach. Then I'm just going to read through. You go through places like Fort Wayne, San Francisco, Mississippi. Like, did you always know that coaching was going to be the path for you after your playing career?
I didn't know, but I wanted it to be, and and I still wanted to play. I was 38. I think I had gotten 84 points that year and led. It was only a 7-game series, but led our team in scoring in the playoffs. But the one thing, I went to the draft in '93 with it was in Quebec, and I had a sit down with Barry. Actually, it's just a good segue. and talked about coaching. And I said, I really want to get into it, blah, blah, blah. And he was giving me some hints on what to do and everything. And I'd gotten offered while we were at the draft a 3-year deal to coach Muskegon. Well, the thing when you're 38 years old and in a minor league hockey player, you don't get anything more than a 1-year deal from about the time you're 28 to beyond. So I'd been going on 1-year deals, and anytime you have a bad year after you're 28, 29 years old, that's it for you. So, I mean, I figured here's a 3-year deal. I'm getting, look at all this, this security I'm getting. I mean, 3 years at $30,000 a year. So, I was going to make $1 million, and in Muskegon. But I mean, it ended up really good. And after the first year, went to Fort Wayne to coach. But it was something I knew I wanted to do. And I took to it pretty easily, because all the time I was playing, like I was a player assistant in Fort Wayne. I was a player assistant in Toronto. I knew that this was something I wanted to do because I didn't know how to do anything else, to be quite frankly. So I had to find a way to stay in the game. And even to this day, this is why I do the media and stuff. It's just a way to stay in the game. I don't ever want to be able to leave it, it seems.
The player assistant part I'm curious about, because we had Rick Bonus on a couple weeks back, and Rick once told me a story about how a time he was a player coach and he was in the box. He was playing coaching in the AHL, and he was in the box, and so he was trying to make line calls from the box because he had gotten into a fight. And so from being a player assistant, what was that kind of dynamic like when you were kind of playing, where you are your teammates, but are you more just the bridge to the head coach? What was that role kind of like? Because obviously that doesn't really exist in today's game anymore.
No, and really it's the bridge. And what you the big thing back in those days is if you gave a guy a player assistant title, it's because you knew he wanted to get into coaching, and it was a title, and you could give him a little bit extra money. And the only other thing is if there was something that was really non-meaningful, he would tell you, thinking he's telling you a secret, right? Like, I mean, hey, I'm going to tell you, but nobody else knows because you're the assistant coach. But I didn't call anything as a forward. In Fort Wayne, Al Sims called everything. We didn't even, back in the 90s and 80s, we didn't even have a second assistant on the bench to run the defense. And so, I mean, and when I went to the East Coast League, you want to hire that player assistant because he's the guy that wants to get into hockey and stay into hockey, and you could offer him a little bit more money. And, in the lower leagues, I mean, if you any dollar that the guys can get, they're going to jump all over it. So adding that title in was a really big thing.
I have to ask you also about your earlier days in Washington when Ovechkin was still comparatively a young guy compared to now. Can you see a player like that? Of course, we all knew about him, him and Crosby back in the day, what they were and how important they were to the game, especially coming out of the lockout and everything. But was he a player where even at that time you thought, I bet he'll still be doing this a decade from now, 15 years from now, the way he was? Can you ever feel that about a player, or is that what makes him so important?
Well, you just, when you have a guy like Alex or guys like that, they don't have to be the greatest goal scorers in the world. You just don't think they're ever going to quit. And I knew that he loved the game. It wasn't one of these corporate superstars that come in and he's got a computer with him and he's looking at the stocks after the game. That's not what Alex was all about, was having fun, which you could see came out very he'd be out with the boys. He couldn't wait to do things, but he would always, I'd say, Alex, come on, let's be in tonight for curfew. And he'd go, hey, a Russian machine never breaks. So, I mean, like you'd get that and I go, okay, all right. But I mean, to me, he came to play every night and he loved to play. That's why, I mean, he's having a hard time making a decision, I believe, because he loves the game so much. He loves to play the game, and you can see when he's doing well how it comes out, visually on his face. But but did I think he was going to last longer than me coaching and everything? I didn't think it was going to happen. But who knows where his career is going to end up? When you talk about Alex, I mean, he could go back to the KHL. He could own the KHL. He could go back. He's, from what I gather, one of Putin's good friends. He could become his right-hand man in politics if he wanted. His father-in-law is a billionaire in Russia. So, his future is whatever he wants it to be. What's my second career going to be? That's probably at some point what he's thinking about, but he's not going to be starting out as a third round pick, having to make his way into it. He's going to be going somewhere right away where he knows where he's going to be at.
On that player perspective for him, and obviously he's the extreme example, the NHL's all-time leading goal scorer. You kind of watch, he went from, as he aged, right, the shot was always there, but he went from that dynamic power forward rush chance guy to, he had to find ways to evolve his game as age kind of caught a little bit of him to an extreme. He's the obviously prime example, because anyone talks about an aging curve, he's the curve that you compare to. But when you kind of worked with players, and we talked about AHL guys, NHL guys, what were some of the parts in careers where you would see with guys where it's like, hey, your game is going to have to evolve? Because I'm sure that there's different spots where a guy hits 30 and, well, the foot speed goes. Like, when you kind of were, as a coach, when you worked with players where they were kind of hitting those thresholds of, you're either going to find a way to adjust your game or you're going to be out of it. What was that kind of like in working with guys throughout their careers?
Well, the older you get, you didn't have to do that because they'd already adjusted their game, so they wouldn't still be in the game. But for the young guys, it's pretty easy. Some guys might have scored 45 goals in junior. I had one guy named Yannick Lahou, and I would bring him in almost on a daily basis when I was in Manchester. And I'd say, listen, you can do this all you want. You can put the puck between your legs and do that. But if you don't learn how to check, you're never going to be in the game. And Roger Nielsen, this is a crazy story, but Roger Nielsen taught me that in 1976, I think, when I was first starting out, and he had coached in junior in Ontario, and I was playing against him, and he hated me, but because I was a Marley and he was a Peterborough Pete. That's a long story. When we went to Dallas, he was coaching me, and he said, "You will not make the NHL just by being an offensive player. You're not fast enough. You're too small. You better learn the defensive aspect of the game, how to check and how to take care of it. That's how you're going to make the NHL." And those are the adjustments you tell the young guys, because most guys, if they score 40 or 50 goals in junior or have a great college career with goals, they think that automatically means that's how they're going to score at the NHL or the American League level. And it never or very rarely happens, because the league's so much better. And so they have to adjust. And I would tell all my guys right now, you better learn the defensive side of the game. That's how you're going to make the NHL. Then if you get there and the coaches can trust you, but when they bring you up as a third or fourth liner for the most part, and they can trust you, then your offensive abilities will be easier enhanced. But if you come up and you're usually called up as a third or fourth line guy, and all of a sudden you think you're hanging out at the red line waiting for pucks to come to you, you're not going to be in the NHL too much longer.
So the Minnesota Wild just tried putting Philip Gustafson back in goal in the playoffs last night after going with the kid, Jesper Wallstedt, in their opening round against Dallas and then for game one. And I couldn't help but think, when they even decided to start Wallstedt in their first round series, about a Ducks team a decade ago that had Frederik Andersen, John Gibson, and I think even Jonas Hiller for a little bit there towards the end of his time. And you had to navigate all of that too, where you have the guy in Gibson who looks like he's going to be there for a while, but Freddie Andersen was also playing really well when he was healthy and everything there too. how tricky is it for a coach, especially when you get to the playoffs, you want to keep everyone happy because there's also long-term investments in some of these guys, but you also want to win the next game, and that is your job to win the next game. How tricky was that to navigate for you, especially that Duck situation, and maybe just in general when it comes to juggling multiple decent goaltenders?
Well, it was difficult because you're guessing who's going to be great the next game, right? And,
Yeah.
but the timing is important too, because and that's why I thought that was a really good move. Actually, I thought they should have pulled Wallstat in the game before and given Gustafsson a little bit of time because he hadn't been in the net in a few weeks, right? Because he played all 7 games. So, but okay, if you're going to make a change, let's not wait till it's 3-0. And then say, okay, go, you win the series for us, because that's not going to happen. Usually you have to make a choice after game 1 or game 2. And in the Gibson, I've made mistakes, a lot of mistakes here in the Gibson-Anderson era when Gibson started, for example, the first 2 games against Nashville at home, and we lost. So I switched to Freddie, and Freddie won the next 3. Now, knowing them as well as I did know them, I should have switched back to Gibson for game 6, because if he had a loss, then Freddie could have come in game 7, because they were both young guys that that would tire physically, and they never played a lot of games in a row. And I made the same mistake the year in when we lost to Pittsburgh when I was in Washington in 7 games. I changed after game 2 from Theodore to Varlamov, who was a rookie.
Yeah.
Okay. And he was outstanding. We won the series, and then we played Pittsburgh. So now he'd gone into play. He ended up playing 12 straight games. He hadn't played 12 straight games ever. Mm-hmm. I should have changed it after game 4, given him a rest, played Theo, and then maybe come back to him. But these are the things you think after the thought. So, I think that the actual change, whether it's going to do any good against a team like Colorado or not, I have no idea, because you could tell even in the 2 games against Minnesota, they've stepped it up quite a big notch over their games against LA, where LA looked like, okay, they're in the game. But now all of a sudden, every player on Colorado is looking like the fastest, best puck handler in the history of the game. You're going, who can stop these guys? But
Logan O'Connor looks like Teemu Selanne out there right now.
He does, yes. Yeah. The worst player that they have at forward is Nazem Kadri. And if he's not, he's helped on the power play.
He's helped in the power play, exactly. Yep.
But that's probably why they got him. But they're going to rue the day 4 years from now when they still have him. Yeah. I will say this. Yeah. But that's the thing with the goaltenders, to me, is knowing when to make the move. And not all of a sudden saying, okay, boys, you go get him. It was a quick story. It reminds me of a story I heard when I was growing up. Is Phil Esposito was on the bench all the time in Chicago, and Billy Ray was the coach, and he never played him. And back then, you would sit a guy the whole game. You never played the guys, like you go with your 9, and unless it was a miracle, and you had to play it. So he got a chance to play. They're down 5-0 in the 3rd period, and Billy Ray says, Phil, you go out there. And Phil turns to Billy Ray and says, well, do you want me just to tie it, or do you want me to go out and win it for you? A smart ass remark like that. Yeah. But that's the thing, the same thing with the goalies. If you let it go to 3-0 and then say, okay, you're our savior, go in and beat Colorado 4 times in a row, it isn't going to happen. So I think this was a good move, even though it didn't pay dividends, because I think Gustafsson let the first 2 shots go in, and it just didn't look like he was ready to make a lot of great saves that night.
From a coaching perspective, kind of connected to that, I'm curious, because some coaches, spending time in Dallas, and now I'm based in Detroit, I've seen different coaches have the approach to whether they publicly share who's in goal or not. And as a coach, 2 questions for that. One, does it really matter? How often does it matter to you who the other guy is in goal and how you're preparing your team? and maybe that's evolved. And the second one is, what was kind of your ideology of whether I'm going to share publicly who's in net, and what was kind of the background thinking on things like that?
Well, the sharing part, to be honest, is just when you like screwing with the reporters.
I knew it. I knew it.
Like, I mean, well, why would we give it a shit, quite frankly?
Yeah.
I mean,
exactly.
We're going with Gibson tonight. Oh, and they're going, oh my God, Gibson's playing. And why do I care? Like this, but if they got snooty, or they were asking snooty questions, or they were people that, you know, like you just didn't like because for whatever reason, I'd say no. We're going to hold that close to our chest, and we'll whoever starts tonight, you'll see when he comes out of the lineup, and they're going, oh my God, there's questions. Well, is Gibson hurt? Is this guy hurt? You know, like, I mean, so there's no real reason, like, why you would hold it back. Like, I mean, if I was a reporter, I'd be going, like, it's not that big a deal. I just asked the question, who started, right? But so that was part of it. As far as the other team's goalie, listen, I cared about my team, and my belief has always been that if we do the things that we're capable of doing, we're going to win. Like, and even when we played Lundqvist twice in 2 7-game series, we knew where his weaknesses were, and we'd go over those things. But it didn't deter what I was going to do just because they were going to start him. I mean, when Halak was in Montreal and they beat us that one series in 2010, we tried to find his weakness, but for 3 games, he never had a weakness. So there was nothing we could do to beat him. But other than that, I would be more focused on what my team was doing. And if they did, you know, it's the same. You can talk about how hockey has grown and used the analytics more, but if you shoot the puck, go to the net, screen the goalie, and create traffic, you're still going to score. You know, like, I mean, those are the things that are constant, right? And that's gonna, like, they don't change.
I want to, you've got so many stories and everything and everything, but I wanted to kind of close out today with something thematically speaking, because a couple of weeks ago we had Dominic Moore on, and Dominic was talking to us about the end of his career, and he went and played the Spengler Cup with Canada, ended up turning that into the final. He said it's called it, then played in the Swiss League for the last half of that season. Called it some of the most fun of his career. You coached, I think it was 2024 or 2023, right around that. You coached that Spengler Cup team. I wish
Dominic would have been on my team then.
Yeah,
but it wasn't. But go ahead.
But just so I've thematically speaking, to connect to an old episode for us, and my internal pitch to at some point try to convince my wife that that's a great place to go for around Christmas in Davos. What's your take me through your Spengler Cup memories? I believe that was your one head coaching experience for Hockey Canada. Just what do you remember about that, and just kind of what sticks in mind for that? Because I've always wanted to ask people about that tournament.
Well, what's was how important it is to the Swedes, everybody out there. And it's a huge tournament, or it's not a huge tournament in North America, but it's a huge tournament out there. And then when you go in and there's 10,000 people in the seats, and they're not sitting down, they're standing up, they're singing, the whole game is a loud, exciting barn. And then if you look, Davos is a very small city, or a very small town, but the streets are jammed because people come from everywhere to watch that. And they're right in the beautiful scenic mountains, and you go up and you have lunch at the top of the Alps, days like that. But I mean, in everything happens so fast. In the hockey portion of it, you don't have a lot of time. I mean, I had one practice. I had to figure out what do we want to focus on with one practice when all the players are coming from all different parts of the world. Like, we'd have a couple American League players. We'd have a couple guys from all the leagues, different leagues in Europe. and maybe a prospect or two that hadn't really made it from an NHL team that was playing in the East Coast League. So you had to get those guys together and to play. And the biggest thing I used was the fact that you're Canadian and we're the hockey town. Like I was trying to pull on the emotional aspect of everything over there. But the snow was fabulous. Everything was great. The only thing I didn't like was the travel, but don't tell your wife about that. Because anytime you go to Europe and then you got to get out and get a 2-hour car ride to Davos, that was the only thing that was negative. Food was great. Everything about that trip was wonderful. Would have loved to have done it again. I'm sad to see that Canada's not going in there next year, but a great tournament and not one bad memory from it. But if I was a tourist, I would love to go just to be. That environment there is so great. Like, I mean, just walking around town, seeing everybody with the ski boots and everything, like being in the mountains, is really cool.
To put a bow on all that, I think Curtis McKenzie, who was a finalist for the Bruce Boudreau Award this year, he didn't win it, but I believe he actually wore a letter for Team Canada at the Spangler Cup. Was it last year, Sean? Do you recall?
Either last year or the year before.
Last year or the year before. Yeah. So that cup is a really cool place in connecting a lot of things about the hockey world, like you mentioned.
Oh yeah, no, it's a great thing, and I still think that if we hadn't lost our two best players, we would have won, but that's me. So, I mean, I don't think there's a coach out there alive sitting there going, well, we never had a chance. We would have won if, and that if never happened.
There's always a path. There was always a path there.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. All right, Bruce, thank you so much for your time today. I know we could listen to stories for a long time. I'm personally thrilled to still hear you very much in the thick of it in the game. It's better for having folks who know what you know and who can tell the stories you can tell. So appreciate your time today for joining us here.
No, it was my pleasure. Thanks for having me. And again, thanks for the award. It means a ton to me. It really does. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Bruce.
Okay. Take care, guys.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye. All right, off mute. Mute.
Yes, there you have it. Okay.
That was to be clear, we did not we didn't give the award. It's Stephen Meserve, 100 Degree Hockey, as part of the committee that led the award. But obviously awesome interview with Bruce Boudreau there. Man. Robert, you and I were messaging back and forth on the back end using our fun producer skills while that was going, while the prior versions of ourselves conducted that interview. And I think we did a good job, but Bruce made us look so much smarter than we actually are.
You can tell he's been an NHL head coach because he's really good at turning like a bad question I'll ask into a really good answer. And that's clearly a skill. So that's also why I can forgive him. Like he admitted, sometimes we're just screwing with reporters. I can have a lot of sympathy for that because I do not always ask, the perfect question or whatever. And as a coach, you have to get good at spinning straw into gold or something less than straw sometimes.
There's a couple of things that popped out to me kind of on when you listen back to that and you go through that interview. And one of the things that was there's two fascinating topics to me. A couple, obviously more than two, but one of them was
only two. You're only allowed two.
One of them was the concept of looking back at some of the series he coached and having a 3-2 series lead and looking back in hindsight and saying, you know what, I should have switched my goalie for game 6, because with the concept of, hey, we either win game 6 and then my other guy's fresh for game 1, or we lose game 6 and then that guy's fresh for game 7. And it goes so much against like that hockey ethos thing, right? Of like, actually, you know what?
You don't change the lineup after a win, basically.
Exactly. And also from a goaltending perspective, I felt a lot of connectivity to our conversation. Was it episode 4 or 5 or 3 even with Steve Thompson from USA Hockey?
Yeah, I want to say 3 or 4. Can't remember.
Where Steve talked a lot about the concept of, from a goaltending perspective, it's the starter and nothing else, right? And one of the things that he wants to kind of see at the youth hockey levels is a little bit of that, not that starter backup dynamic, but that starter closer dynamic, right? Almost stealing a bit of the baseball energy that comes with it. So I kind of thought about that front. It was some great stories. What popped for you?
I appreciated him acknowledging that, like, yeah, we're not like reacting to whatever goalie the other team starts.
Yes.
You know, like we could have gone really deep, you know, and I'm sure players, that some players know certain goalies' tendencies. I'm sure Jason Robertson knows certain, goalies' tendencies. I'm sure Nikita Kucherov knows certain things that he can exploit on when you've been in the league long enough. You just kind of learn these things, but it's not like your game plan as a team is going to change because of stuff like that. And a coach just flat out admitting that makes it even more it makes me sigh a little bit with all the intrigue and stuff, especially around the playoffs that was happening, where it's like, well, we'll see, your game time decision. It's like, there's almost never any such thing as a game time decision. There's almost never any real like intrigue about, we don't want to let him know which goalie we're starting. Well, most of the time it's probably just because the coach doesn't want to answer the questions about it in the moment.
Yeah. Well, or if there is a game time decision, it's never actually game time. There's that. It's typically around 5:30ish. Guys get to the rink, and there's that trainer check, right? So there's like, if we want to actually be clear, if there ever is a game time decision, it tends to be. I asked
99% of the time. Yeah, there is that tiny sliver when guys actually try something out during warmups just to make sure.
Yes.
But that's usually if they're like dealing with an injury and they literally just got a shot or something, and they need to know if the pain's going to be too bad or whatever.
Yeah, but in most cases, it is just, hey, you kind of know at 5:30. It's the whole. I don't think media people would like, if I could have the best of both worlds. It makes me think, and this is going to go be a little bit maybe too far inside baseball on how media works. But
let's do it. Let's do it.
The almost ideal world for like media availability is players at morning skate, and then coaches like an hour before the game, right? Because then
it's my favorite when they have like a day game or an early start and you don't have a morning skate, and the coach talks like an hour and a half before the game. That's usually a way better availability to me for the coach, because they don't have to defer or say, we'll see, or we have to have these talks, or I haven't talked to him since he just got off the ice. Everything's pretty much set by then.
It's also the coaching perspective, and we didn't go down this route with Bruce, but it's a fascinating dynamic for me to talk about, because obviously I live it on the day-to-day. Is there is how does the relationship with a coach evolve from a game day to a practice day to, like, there's different coaches have different mentalities the way you approach it as a reporter. And like, I think, for example, obviously we had him on the show, but Rick Bowness was always a little bit more intense actually on practice days, because like the game day was always like, the practice day was the day you really had to get the work in to get things going. The game day, you were your process was in place one way or the other, and your work was kind of done, right? So like those were the times where for Rick Bowness, those morning skate days, those non-game days, you actually got a little bit more, in my view. And I think it differs from coach to coach. I've covered and you obviously you dealt with Glenn Goldson this year, and he's someone who I didn't cover the first time around for him in Dallas, but I would be fascinated. There's many things about Glenn Goldson that fascinate me, but I would be fascinated about how that evolved for him, career over career.
It's an interesting question. I do think the stress of being a head coach, of being the guy, is very unique, and I think it's there in every sport, in different ways and at different times. But like, there is a huge amount of stress and anxiety in being a head coach, and I think how you deal with that, it'll come out at some point, right? It's going to be revealed how you deal with that. And that's why I have a lot of respect for, coaches aren't perfect, and there are some coaches that are less perfect than others, but coaches that can deal with that stress well. And, it's only been 1 year, but in my experience with Glenn Goldson compared to Pete DeBoer, there were times that I felt Goldson could have been more stressed, especially being on your first year in a deal and you have a lot of stuff to prove and you haven't been a head coach in a long time. It seemed like he was able to deal with that stress, at least as far as we saw. But honestly, from stuff I heard too behind the scenes, like, he very much was just this is the guy I want to be. This is the person I want to be. And this is the coach I want to be, where neutral is best. And that was always his response about stuff, is not just the not too high, not too low, but just like that is the way he likes to approach life even. And I think the coaches you see that are really successful, they'll have times, where they get pretty passionate. You could see John Cooper the other night getting pretty passionate about stuff. Jared Bednar had his moments last night against Minnesota, but and Bruce Boudreau for that matter, you can find lots of clips of him expressing his displeasure with, whether it's a call or a play or something like that. But I have a lot of time for coaches who can manage that stress and kind of almost enjoy a game day or the time that would seem like it should be stressful, because they love the game that much, and they realize, what, there's stuff that's not in my control, and that's okay. And that seems like the healthiest way to do it too, just from a human level.
Yeah, it's a good way to look at it, because I feel like, well, obviously Jim Montgomery had his oustering in Dallas wasn't the greatest and everything, but I think one of the things I remember about dealing with him on game days and everything, he was one of those guys, and I think he's been a very good coach with what he's done. Obviously, he got a bit of a raw end of the stick in Boston with how that ended after having one of the best regular seasons ever, and has done a pretty good job with St. Louis. And so I think there's an element to that. I need you to pick a topic to go over for 45 seconds by yourself, because my live production note is to go make sure that dog is not stuck.
Is it Vesna or Lady Bing? Which one is it?
Lady Bing. It's Lady.
Okay.
It's Lady Bing, but she's she is now deaf, so I can't just yell over to her. So I have to actually get up and walk over to handle her. So I need you to pick a 30-second topic. I will have the audio up, but
that's perfect. I've got a digression here. So you brought up, go ahead.
Digress.
So in talking about coaches and stress, Bruce Boudreau also brought up, you could see it if you're watching the video, him saying, oh yeah, we make a goalie announcement, and all the reporters would, get their phones out and go, oh, this goalie's starting or whatever, and it'd be a big deal. And this is something that's always been, for me, some tension in press conferences about, do you want to be the person who tweets it first when the coach announces it, and then you tweet it first and it gets aggregated and retweeted or reshared or whatever by all these people? Or do you want to be the person who's kind of locked in and ready to ask the next question because you've been listening? There's so much temptation, although I think it's less now than it used to be, because people don't click on stuff on social media in the same way they did 5, 10, and especially 10 years ago. But in those press conferences, coaches see, right, when everyone's head goes down, and immediately you start tweeting stuff. And for me, more and more, I've kind of tried to do that less. There are still times where I will find myself doing it, especially if I'm like the only one there or whatever. It's important to get the info out. But I think there's a lot to be gained from being the one person who's actually like watching and listening to the coach the entire time, and just trusting, what, I'll write about this later. I'll put it up on social media later. I'm not going to be first. That's okay. I'll make sure I'm accurate. But for now, I'm going to actually be listening and have this be a two-way dialogue instead of just answer a question. Okay, yeah, let me regurgitate this, which isn't any shade on anyone that does do that. There are a lot of people who have to do that because it's literally their job. And so I get it. But press conferences, for me, it's funny to hear a coach talk about, oh yeah, we see everyone's head go down and go crazy when we give a goalie announcement, because it is a very dehumanizing kind of, or at least less humanizing sort of thing to be in a conversation with someone, then they tell you something and immediately go tell everybody else what they said, instead of listening and having dialogue with them. As much as a press conference is ever a dialogue.
There was I remember working with a reporter earlier in their career, and this person has gone and done really good things, but I won't name them because it's their story to tell. But there was a reporter I know who they would be part of the scrum, and we both aren't a big fan of scrums in general and everything like that.
Hard to get great info out of scrums. Yeah.
But there would be, you still have to at least try to be present, right? Like the eye contact's important, the attentiveness is important, but they would be kind of managing a bunch of things and checking Twitter and everything like that. And I know there was a player at one point who just, it wasn't even the scrum that player was in, but they saw this person scrolling Twitter while they're playing, and they're like, why the hell are we going to give you the time of day if when one of us is talking, you're spending your time scrolling Twitter and everything like that? Because so that's a really good point. And I see it. You see it kind of constantly, and it also goes back to the larger approach, I guess, of what is the job now, right? Like I was at and this maybe is a good segue here. I was at the press media availability stuff today here in Detroit for the with the announcement that there will be a PWHL team in Detroit coming up this year, and there's a press conference. There was first a press conference, which wasn't really a press conference because it was an announcement with people speaking at podiums, and then there's no questions asked, and then they did media availability behind the press conference. So semantics, but that's not a press conference, that's an announcement.
Yes.
And then there's the media availability and interviews afterwards. And we're speaking with Jenna Hefford, who's the executive vice president of hockey operations for the PWHL, and we're speaking with her about this and everything. And you go and you're getting pertinent information of like, oh, what is it going to look like for the timeline to hire someone, or when might there be a team logo or branding and things like that. And that's stuff where if I start while we're talking, Robert, if you say that to me and I just start doing this, like I can even just like, I've lost you're losing focus right there. And you feel people just want to feel inherently respected too, right? Like there's an inherent disrespect about that moment where you and I even speaking right now, while we might not be giving the greatest answer in the world, I myself, particularly myself, but unless there's something where you and I are researching it and everything like that, there's an importance that the other person is listening and is creating this conversation. So that's a great point. So
I had to read this philosopher. I can't remember. I think he was writing. I think he was living during Martin Buber, who wrote about he called it dialogical philosophy. I think he was like 1930s or 1940s Jewish philosopher, and he talked about how there's I and you and thou, and for him thou, he used like an old-timey term because in the context of a conversation where both people are fully present, he said there is something that's almost sacred that's happening because both of you are actually turning your gaze to the other and your attention to the other person, and it actually is both like receptive and giving, like you're both giving and receiving like your full attention and your face and gaze and all these things. And it obviously gets really, really weird, nerdy and stuff because it's philosophy, but that's always stuck with me, that like every conversation to at least some tiny extent should be treated as a little bit like more than just a conversation on some level. Like there's another human being there. They deserve, like you said, they deserve your respect. They deserve your attention, even if it's professional, even if it's, where it's a little bit of a song and dance or dog and pony show, and we're just giving them a canned quote and they're going to make sure not to say anything. We're going to tweet it out later. Like it's easy to get cynical about those things, but I found that like the more I choose to, and I'm not always good about it either, for sure, in a lot of different contexts, but the more I tend to invest in those, both in that personal level and just inherently respecting the person that I'm talking to or hearing from, the more you tend to get out of it when you're more attentive. And that's not like mind blowing or anything, but I think it's true. It's true in every conversation you have, even in a press conference or a scrum or whatever it is. You're going to usually get a little bit more if you choose to be a little more present.
Well, I think you can speak a little bit well to this as someone who worked in the education system, right? Where I think if you kind of think of like the basic human needs, right? Because I look at it, obviously, a lot of this stuff for me comes through the lens of looking at my kids and how they act and how the world goes and everything. But you go and you give if I'm doing this while telling my children to go and get food or eat their dinner or whatever, they're immediately like, well, he doesn't actually care, right? Like that.
They can tell. Kids can totally tell. You're right.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think that's an element of like, if that's kind of as talking about the most basic human need, and when it comes to the interview, we're going down our TED Talk alley again right now. So we are a true podcast.
Well, we got all introspective because we just watched an interview we did for the last half hour.
We did.
And so we're all thinking, oh, what's going on here? This is great. Love this. Okay, but you did make a good segue though, because you literally went to an announcement / media availability / not interview this morning with Detroit's PWHL team. And you wrote about it too. I read that piece today. The cool thing, they're going to be using sort of colors and branding that kind of are connected to the Red Wings branding. At least they're not necessarily going to use like another wheel with a wing as the logo. I mean, they might, we don't know, but at least they'll be kind of alluding to the same, seems like color scheme, maybe a little bit more black than just red and white. But that seems cool. Any idea what the name might be or could be, or how they even come to that?
Yeah, no idea on the name or logo yet. We do know black. They said black and silver will be the primary colors with a red accent, which I like. So red's the accent color, kind of a nod to the Red Wings there.
I like that.
The interesting, they did reveal the logo having slapped it on the side of a Corvette. So I don't know if that was just.
The Corvettes? Would they call them the Corvettes?
I don't know, but like you could play off the Motor City vibe on that. But they had I don't know if it was just that was the fancy car we had of the right color, because they had a black and silver Corvette that they put the logo on the side of it, and so I don't know if that was part of it.
It'd be interesting.
I do know they did say jersey-wise in year one, it'll probably be similar to year one for all PWHL teams, where jersey rollout in year one will just be the color scheme with the diagonal text Detroit, right? Which is what they've done for most of the teams in year one.
Interesting.
Which is probably, I mean, just from a jersey manufacturing standpoint, probably makes sense from both a on ice product and then a merchandise product as well, right? That is
you don't have to super rush things, or even the decision process. You can take your time, and actually year two is when you roll out the full product.
Correct. I do hope personally, I just think from a branding perspective, even if you don't have the full blown jersey this year one, I do think a logo and a team name in year one are probably a good idea. In my personal view, obviously there's probably some not pushback, but the Utah, what happened with the Utah Mammoth and taking some time is a success meter, right? Obviously the Mammoth have done a good job, but I do think having that from day one is definitely a smart idea. Yeah. And I think the Utah one's a little different too, because it was a changing location. So it was that was the
get out of Dodge and we'll figure it out later approach.
Correct. And so I think there's an element to that. The PWHL draft will be June 16th and 17th in Detroit at the Fox Theater. I can't help but wonder if maybe the time frame for a team name and logo will be in place for that. That seems like an ideal time to kind of launch that. And we might also have probably a couple other expansion teams. It sounds like there might be as many as 4 for this coming year that will also have the teams themselves. So I know Chicago is heavily rumored / confirmed to be the next one. I'm excited about it though, Robert. Like I wrote about it, and if you're watching this at Chap Shots Hockey, you can scroll down and see that story, or just go check it out. I'm excited about it for a couple of reasons. I think there's, on a personal level, it's as a dad of a 7-year-old daughter who watched hockey and kind of had a little bit of that. Well, they're wearing. We only watch boys hockey, Dad. We only ever watch boys hockey on TV, and then to go we went to all 4 games of those takeover games. The neutral site games, and I know you went to one in Dallas. My daughter just felt just such a connection point of seeing pro hockey players with ponytails, right? Yeah. That really connects. And so I'm excited about that. From a professional level, more hockey, more stories to tell is always exciting for me. And I don't know what I'm going to do on the quote unquote daily with the coverage of the PWHL now being in Detroit, but there'll be a lot more I get to do with that. Some more fun stories on the human side, the hockey side. I remember when the PWHL came over for the neutral site game this year, speaking with the coaching staff in Montreal about how the jailbreak rule and the 3-2-1 point system impact things as a coaching. Like, it's a league filled with stories that I'm really excited to dive into. And it's a fun setup, and I'm interested to see where it goes. And I like I like the kind of the way that it wasn't not so force isn't the right word, but I like the way that it was that they took the time to get it right. Like, because I do wonder if, and everyone was obviously all bullish on Detroit right from the front, and today's the big, hey, we're celebrating this new team and everything. But I do wonder if you gave all the truth serum to them of how much did you need 3 or 4 crowds of that size in Detroit to know it would be something that could sell as a business model? Because I think that's the part where it's all fine and good to be like, hey, this is a great idea and this should exist, but then the business model really has to be there. And when you only have one game per year, it's easy to sell. It just to be honest, it's one event, right? Like, and I always compare it to concerts, right? Like, if your favorite artist was in town, think about your favorite artist coming to town once a year versus your favorite artist potentially having a residency, right? Yep. Like, that's that's something where you would make the effort to go see them if they were only there once a year. But if they were there and they were playing 10 or 12 times, you're only going once. And so I think that's the way Little Caesars really kind of drew all of those games for all of those neutrals, gave them kind of the other key thing. And I don't want to go all business corporate shilly on this, but I think it is important. The other thing for Detroit, and I don't know if this is the case with Chicago, but for Detroit, Ally Financial, which is the big digital banking stuff, whatever, they are the presenting sponsor for Detroit, and they're a Detroit-based company. And for them, it's a company that has bet big on investing in women's sports. I had not known about today until apparently in 2022, Ally made this commitment to, within 4 years, to make sure to do a 50% media buy for men's and women's sports, just to kind of get to that level of, and they got to it earlier actually than they expected. And once again, I don't want to be all corporate shilly on this, but a lot of times with corporate sponsorship and money and everything like that, these things don't exist without somebody having the oodles of cash saying, I want to make sure this becomes a community asset.
Well, and I mean, that's the case for a lot of good things, right? If you want to grow something in a community, you need someone willing to make that investment, whether it's a corporation or whether it's one big, billionaire or whatever comes in and does this. I was thinking about this the other day because Ken Hitchcock, when he was inducted into the Dallas Stars Hall of Fame a couple of years ago, he gave a speech talking about youth hockey and the growth of youth hockey in a non-hockey market here in Dallas, and how there were, at the time when he came in the mid 90s, there were like a few dozen, maybe 100 or some like youth hockey players in the Metroplex in one of the biggest markets in the United States. And now, cut to what, almost 30 years later now, there's however many, thousands, tens of thousands, I think. It's grown like crazy. They're building more rinks. How you do all that, anytime there's a lot of money going into stuff, there's always there's more oversight, stuff gets trickier. That's a different conversation, but sticking with kind of the corporate thing, finding ways to get those things done, you need someone to come in and do it, whether it's a team, whether it's an ownership group, whether it's a firm like Ally who says this is our stated mission and this is a model we think that can work, where we have this kind of 50-50 commitment that we honor. It's also interesting with the PWHL team, and this is another reason I'm kind of excited for you to have this team to cover. A little bit like Bruce Boudreau was talking about, the finances can be a little bit more interesting when you're not necessarily at that NHL quality where everyone's basically making almost $1 million. Like him talking about how he got that sort of player assistant title as partly just a way to pay him a little bit more money in the budget, because they couldn't necessarily, it sounds like, give him like an outright raise, but they could give him an extra title and give him an extra, probably, I'm guessing it was like a stipend or something. And that you get to those basic economics when you're dealing with smaller numbers, and that makes for more interesting kind of decisions, because people have to be really, really practical about, okay, what does this mean for me, for my family? What's the investment here? Am I going to sign this deal as a coach for 3 years? I think Bridger talked about that too. And I just think in the PWHL, some of the wage information came out recently too, publicly. So people could see what different players are making around the league and it's interesting to see the disparity. It's still way, way better than anything that was really there for women's hockey before. And I don't think transparency is ever bad, but it's much, much less than the top men are making, right, in the NHL. So hopefully that growth will happen. They certainly seem to be committed to it with all the expansion that's happening. It'll just be up to them to make sure that expansion happens in a way where it directly connects to basically the rising tide that lifts all ships.
And I want to. This is something that maybe
we talk about rambling. I think I hit on like 8 different things there.
That was great. That was great. That was perfect. And I'm not just patting your back. That was. But you can also. I think the other thing that we can. PWHL is interesting as well because it is. The ownership model is all the teams are owned by the Walters Group, which is led by, I believe, the primary owner of the Los Angeles Dodgers.
Yeah, the Walter Guggenheim or whoever it is. Yeah.
And there's and it's kind of similar to how MLS is run, where there's owners and sometimes stakeholders, but really the league owns all the teams. So you look at just the thing that I kind of go down this path that I keep being fascinated about is there's years of the WNBA. We always hear about the profitability in the WNBA and everything like that, and whether it is profitable. And obviously the NBA puts a lot of money in to help raise that product up. For the PWHL, a lot of it, while there is some cohesion with the NHL, obviously the Ilitch family owns the Red Wings, and there'll be some things, and then there's some other places where people are connected. There's kind of a they're doing this without the NHL co-writing it, and I think that's a big thing. And you look at the there's other stakeholders taking financial bets, and not the NHL, which I think is an interesting part of this.
And some people had said back before all the, when there were the NWHL and the I can't remember what the other organization was before. I'm going to get the acronyms wrong. Was it just the CWHL? Something like that.
Yeah, there's the CWHL existed first.
Yes.
The NWHL was the National Women's Hockey League.
Mm-hmm.
So.
And then that had a lot of interesting history, much like the NHL did back in the day too. A lot of these sports leagues, when you look back to their early days, it's a lot more like the Wild West. So I always try to remember that with any new league, that look, it always takes a while for a league to really start to turn into a more streamlined operation. In some cases, they're still working on it. So I have all the time in the world for them sorting this stuff out. But I remember the conversation at that time when they were saying, look, ultimately what we have to get to is a point where there's one professional league for women's hockey, because having it split and having 2 competing leagues just ultimately isn't good. And it puts more financial stress on investors. You have to pick one or whatever. And the hope was that the league, the NHL, would do much what the NBA has done with the WNBA and be a big investor and partner in doing all that. So I find it a lot more impressive, I guess, that it's been that the PWHL has been as successful as it has without really having that level of partnership from the NHL. So good on them for figuring it out and expanding and growing and finding partners who are willing to make it happen. It's still early days in a lot of ways. So it's interesting to see, but I mean, Hillary Knight said when I went to that takeover tour in Dallas, and she said, this is the first professional league I've really played in, which was kind of some shade at those older leagues. But when she stands up, a legend in women's hockey stands up and says, this is actually a professional league compared to the other ones, it tells me that they're moving in the right direction, and there's a lot of positive momentum, because no one would know it better than her, I think. So kudos to them for getting it going. And I'm excited that people in Detroit, they might not have necessarily rinks to skate at, but they'll have a rink to go watch women's hockey at.
That's a good point. And Robert is alluding to the fact that I always actually...
You put him on the spot. It was good.
I asked the Mayor Mary Sheffield in Detroit. I actually asked her about this today out of curiosity, because while Detroit is hockey town, outside of Clark Park, which is a seasonal outdoor rink, there are no full-time skating surfaces in the city of Detroit, actually. So that's something that I was asked the mayor about, and she said that she hopes to talk to the Ilitch family about it a little bit more. Interestingly enough, you talk about people of power and how they handle press conferences. Chris Ilitch, who is the principal owner of the the Red Wings, basically, who leads the family, who is hardly ever available and hasn't. I don't think he's spoken in person since Derek Lalonde was hired, I think. So he made a public appearance today for the presentation perspective, but then when I asked to speak to him in the interview perspective, I was told that he would not be available. So that's kind of how people of power sometimes use things. So when people of power do speak more frequently, I actually give a little bit more credit. And I think it's one of those things where you kind of have that perspective in Dallas with Jim Nill, where I think it's highly appreciative of how often Jim speaks. I do want to say, just kind of connecting back to an older point that you made real quick here, I do think there's a ceiling. I don't know, and this is just an optics perspective for me. For me, the NBA, WNBA part of things is the WNBA could never be more than the women's NBA, right? And I think when you have that, right, and if you were to go WNHL or have something like that, you would run into this spot of this glass ceiling, an additional glass ceiling within the glass ceiling of it would never be anything more than the women's version of this. I do like with the PWHL where there is the space where it can grow itself, and everything it grows and builds, I think is going to be earned.
It'll be their own, whatever they make and however far it goes, it'll be entirely their own. And, in theory, again, you went back to any of these leagues 100 years ago, right? You looked back at Major League Baseball 100 years ago. You look back at the NHL 50 years ago, even less time than that. There was some crazy stuff happening. So all things considered, the league looks pretty healthy at this stage, just relative to kind of how sports leagues tend to grow. And it'll be exciting to see what they build, because everything they've built so far, it seems like they're trying to avoid the pitfalls of other leagues, both women's hockey and just professional sports in general. They're trying to avoid those pitfalls as much as they can. It's tough anytime you have that much money. I mean, MLS has its own issues right now too, with different clubs and relocation. I think Vancouver now is going a little bit of the Columbus route in some ways. It's a whole nother podcast probably, but yeah, it'll be cool to see. It'll be cool to see what they build. And you mentioned Jim Nill. He's talking to the media tomorrow, which is always greatly appreciated, because you can only learn stuff if people answer questions. And ultimately I think that's a reporter's job, is to, help people learn stuff that they wouldn't know if they didn't have the media, literally the medium between them and the people in power.
It's also an interesting spot too, where kind of how the media consumption and literacy is interesting too, of where it all goes, right? Because the teams have so many now mouthpieces, both intentionally, not intentionally, that's the wrong word. They have ones that are both, they have mouthpieces that are well public, that work for the team and everything like that. And then they have ones where there's also maybe more subtle control that people might not know when it comes to how things were, when it comes to maybe a TV partner or a rights holder.
Yeah,
exactly. And so that's a big thing, I think, when it comes to kind of going through and talking about all of this. And obviously something that's fresh in my mind, not just from what I went to today, but there's the whole Maple Leafs presser earlier this week and everything. And
yeah, their big guy's talking a lot. I don't know why people seem to get angry every time he does, but he's been talking a lot lately.
Yeah. So it's definitely it's a big part of it. We're about 5 or 6 minutes from our next guest coming. So before we go to that, I wanted to throw an idea to you on something.
Okay.
We got some loud background noise there. Sorry about that.
Parenthood. It's the best. Okay. I hear. My favorite line, by the way, everyone's a great parent until they have kids.
Yes, exactly. Everyone is a great parent until they have kids. That's how you feel. Yeah. Because you saw the game in Dallas and you kind of saw the PWHL game in Dallas, you saw kind of the hockey space on that. You've covered the growth of the sport. You're one of the few people in Dallas who has kind of gone to the expanded Dallas Hockey University. You were at U18s. You've gone down to watch games in Cedar Park.
A couple of ECHL games this year.
Couple ECHL games. When you look at kind of Dallas, when you look at kind of the space and the growth of the game, and I was laughing about it because we never actually asked Bruce about it. Bruce played for the Dallas Blackhawks in the 80s, right?
Wow.
We never asked Bruce about it because he was playing for that team. And if you go through the Dallas Hockey History Museum and you go check it out, there's going to be he might even be on the wall there. When you look at kind of the sports growth from where it's going, what are the things for you that are kind of the next steps in that market? Where, because the NHL team obviously has done a great job, but like when you look at the next steps for you in Dallas, I'm curious.
For me, honestly, and we've talked about this before, it's such a big college sports town. It's such a big area of media coverage is college sports. Certainly football is the biggest one, but not exclusively. There are so many colleges here with big college sports programs. Granted, the economics of having hockey rinks to all those colleges is a tricky one, but I think once the momentum builds to a point where that starts to happen, whether that's in Texas or somewhere else, that'll be a big tipping point. Another thing that could happen is another NHL franchise in Texas, that suddenly there's a rivalry, which there used to be in the AHL when you had a couple teams in Texas. And now they're down to just the one. That's a really good thing for the game when it's a given, not just this one kind of unique, oh yeah, there's this one thing, and also there's this hockey team. If it's just part of the atmosphere, part of the environment, like, oh yeah, there's a sports program, there's probably a hockey team, or yeah, it's a thing to do. Like a lot of these minor hockey league teams, they're great in their communities, a big part of them, but just to be really, really blunt, like that rink in Allen isn't filling up, even on a Friday night, not in football season, because it's just not quite part of the fabric in the same way that, a football stadium or something might be. And that's no shade to the team or whatever. I don't know, hardly anything about a lot of their marketing efforts and everything that they do. It's just the reality of where kind of hockey is in that pecking order. But the longer it's here, the more success the team has. And really the youth hockey growing. I mean, the Stars just built another one of their what do they call them? Children's Health Star Centers, I think is the official branding right now in Northlake up here. Just another kind of DFW suburb. Eventually it starts to become this thing where you have hockey players now, young women too, as well as young men, could, not in Dallas, but in Detroit, right? They can actually have a path. You wrote about it today, but that matters to me. I think when you can actually see yourself, oh, someday I could be playing here. Talk to Cross Hannes, who plays for the Texas Stars, but is from here, from Texas. I think was it Plano? I can't remember exactly what city he's from. I'll have to double check. No, that's Blake Coleman. Cross Hannes is from Texas, like Dallas, Texas, and he grew up like going to Dallas Stars games, and now is a professional hockey player who thought it was really, really, really awesome that he could play professional hockey in Texas. I think the more that becomes just a given, the bigger it'll be, and the more teams you have, the easier it is for it to be given. So it's kind of an answer and a non-answer at the same time, because it's a lot of different things. But when you have a team that's successful, more people go. When the more teams that are successful, the more minor hockey tends to thrive. Like the Olympics do well, the NHL does well. The NHL does well, minor hockey does well, college hockey does well. All these things are connected. Some are more linked to the community than others, but it's a big deal. But it's also very dependent on a lot of other factors. You're muted.
Yeah.
There we go.
Oh, there we go. Sorry. Yeah, it's a level of how do you kind of create the sport as part of a community is a great question. And our next guest will actually, when they do come on, I think actually can help give us a little bit of an idea for how things do and don't work in that regard. And
speaking of a non-hockey market, yeah,
I know exactly, and we'll definitely we're teasing in for about 2 more minutes till they come on. The other, I think you see it with, and once again, I'm not sure, I don't have the books in front of me of how the team in Allen does or doesn't do things or anything like that, but I have gone and seen ECHL teams that fill the building, like for example Toledo does. And one of the reasons that Toledo is such a successful thing is it's become ingrained in that minor league hockey, minor league sports are so ingrained in that community, and they also have the connection to that kind of youth hockey space and connection where you become a fan of the game, whether you play it even for a little bit or maybe you play it, but it becomes part of kind of your connection to a community at 5 or 6 years old. All of a sudden, that's something that you connect to for life. And I think that's a big selling point. I'm hoping that for, like, obviously that's why Detroit has this hockey town moniker. There's hockey is such a part of the Michigan space and everything, but I'm hoping that for women's hockey, which already has this large base of players and everything. I talked to Brendan Morrison today, former NHLer who played at Michigan. today. He coaches the 19U Little Caesars team. He talked about the impact of just having this program here, having this space of this team that these players can look at and see, and hopefully that extends to the college level, which is a whole nother story at some point. Can just to see it, to be able to actually go and watch a game, I mean, I think means a ton, and it's a big deal.
Sidebar, I know we're about to transition, but
yep,
I do think that individual success, even at those lower minor hockey levels, is a big deal.
Yeah.
If you have, even in a small community, a hockey team, minor league hockey team, whatever it is, that starts to become known for kind of being really successful, people start to be a little proud of that and say, hey, we have this team here that tends to do really well, and that's pretty cool. That works at the largest level, and I think that also works at the small level. So success always does pay dividends, but there's also a lot else that has to happen, and we can talk about that probably with our next guest in a lot more detail.
Yeah, great segue there, Robert. We're about to bring someone in who can talk quite a bit about helping kind of hockey grow in an area and market it in two cases, both at the NHL and AHL level. Excited to bring on Troy Bodie. I believe the title now is VP of Hockey Operations for the Coachella Valley Firebirds. Obviously, they work closely with the Seattle Kraken as well. I think that's the correct title, Troy. Other than did I get the title right? Is it VP of Hockey Operations?
General Manager. Yeah.
General manager.
An old title, but
okay. Yeah. So general manager of the Coachella Valley Firebirds, Troy. Thanks for joining us. We were just Robert and I were just kind of talking about, because I'm in Detroit right now. I was down at Little Caesars Arena this morning. They announced a new team coming here, and obviously you are someone who has a unique perspective on bringing new teams and into being part of that process. And so I just wanted to kind of start right there with, you're at a spot where we'll talk a lot about Coachella, but I want to start with Seattle. You coming in, and you've been there since day one for that franchise, or almost day one. What's it been like to kind of see and be part of growing a market and a franchise? And then we'll talk a lot about Coachella too, I promise.
Yeah, no, the experience of building Seattle Kraken was super rewarding. Being able to be part of the expansion draft, our first NHL draft, the entry draft, and then that first season, of course, was really rewarding in a lot of ways. You know, the expansion draft was something I didn't think I didn't know really what to expect. You go in and you've got so many choices and so many ways to build a team, and so many fun exercises of, let's see what happens when we build the most defensive team we possibly can. Now let's go all offense, and now let's go, just pick the best defense core and fill it in from there, and just kind of weighing all those out. And it was a lot of fun. It was really, really good experience. And then, seeing the hockey market in Seattle grow, the fan support. I mean, we all know Seattle's such a great sports town, with all their great franchises there, and we fit in seamlessly in that regard. And the fan support has just been unbelievable. But it's been a lot of fun working with the Kraken the last 5 years, and what we've got going on in Coachella here has been great as well.
So I lived in Seattle for a few years, 2016 to 2019, Troy. And when I moved, I think they just announced that there was a team coming to Seattle right when I was moving, which I was really bummed about, because I used to walk through Queen Anne all the time back when I lived up there, and it would have been awesome to have an NHL team there. But people have talked a lot about announcements about maybe a basketball team coming right now. It's obviously a very packed, people love the Sounders there too, in addition to, the Seahawks and the Mariners too. How much is that just a perceived kind of concern about, oh no, anytime there's a crowded sports landscape, it's tough for a newer team to kind of carve out their niche? Or is it a case where kind of one team being successful helps other teams? How do you guys look at it, knowing, okay, we're not going to be the newest team in town anymore? There's going to potentially be another team that's coming in.
Yeah, I mean, I think it just grows it just allows the city of Seattle to just grow as a hockey market, or as a sports market, really. The Supersonics were always there, and then since the day they left, they wanted them back. And the Seahawks are so good, and the Sounders and the Mariners, and we come in and we saw instant success in terms of fan support. There's talks about an NBA team, of course. Who knows how that'll go? But I just think it's just going to add to what a great sports market Seattle is.
And so you come in Seattle. I know kind of you worked in Seattle in year one. It's NHL team, and then as you knew kind of coming in that you were going to be part of building an AHL franchise too. And I think that's kind of one of the unique spots of when it comes to building a team. Everyone thinks about team one, but there's also the AHL and the support team and everything. And you've gotten to learn quite a bit from the hockey side. I know you have the business side for Coachella. And so I want to kind of start open-ended on Coachella. When you kind of get this idea and get told, hey, we're going to go start a program here, we're going to start a team here, has it been what you expected? Has it been completely different? Like, I just want to kind of start open-ended with Coachella as someone who knew the AHL, knew the hockey world, and then get told, hey, we're going to try and build the right thing here in a place that there's a lot of palm trees.
Yeah, exactly. The same thing is in Seattle. Like you think it's going to work, right? And you hope it's going to work, and you hope to press all the right buttons. And until you actually open the doors the first game, you go, okay, is this going to work? Seattle obviously was a huge success. The first game we had in Coachella Valley sold right out. It was one of the best atmospheres I've been a part of. But of course, when the Kraken started, we were still a year away with Coachella. We didn't have enough prospects for a full AHL team. We took prospects shared with Florida in Charlotte. So it was a great way, for all of us to kind of get our feet wet in the AHL on that side of things, and kind of work out all the kinks with our prospects in Charlotte while we built out Coachella Valley. I was living in LA at the time. I'd drive out once a month, check out the arena. It'd be 105 degrees, and I'd be in full PPE gear, long pants, and a helmet, and going, yeah, it's pretty hot here. But what we've built from an arena standpoint has been unbelievable. We figured it was going to work with all the snowbirds down here, and then the fact that this is a large city without any sort of pro sports team, and I expected it to work. I didn't think we were going to have the huge success of turning this into a hockey town like we did, and it's truly been that. Like, if you drive through the Coachella Valley, which is mostly known as Palm Springs, but there's 9 cities in the Coachella Valley. You drive through any one of those cities, you see Firebirds merch everywhere, and you jump in an Uber and start talking to the driver, and they love the Firebirds. And you go to restaurants and you see flags and little mascot Fuego dolls, everywhere. And it's truly turned this place into, Firebirds territory. And we've enjoyed the success, and it's been, we see it at the games, we see it at the box office, and it's been a sounding success from that regard.
I wanted to go. There's 2 things I'm curious about. So the first one is I'm curious about the branding, because obviously that's something where you got to see as this team got built, and you got to see some of the decisions behind that. And in the AHL, we've seen some teams go with, obviously Robert and I are very close with the Dallas Stars and the Texas Stars, or you have teams that are like the Minnesota Wild and the Iowa Wild. And so I'm curious for you guys, when you were looking at building that up, what kind of came into the ideology for everyone and this is more of a business question, but what kind of came into the branding of, as opposed to just being, you could have done the Coachella Valley Kraken, and that would have fit with some other AHL team name. So I'm kind of curious of what came into the building on the business side of that, of looking for a name for an AHL team.
Yeah, well, if you look at the Kraken, obviously the Kraken are a mythical, octopus, squid, however you want. And Seattle being right on the ocean, that kind of fit of what they are. And obviously we're in a desert and not that close to the water, and you find the water in your drinks and on the golf course than anywhere. But what we are is we've got heat, and that's the fire. And Firebird's a mythical kind of phoenix type bird. So I think the mythical animal type theme is what they were going for with the yin and the yang of the Kraken. I think it's been phenomenal. Obviously, we don't have any orange in the colors of the Kraken, but we do share the ice blue in the eye of the Firebird. That was kind of it, really. I mean, I think it was just super cool how the two mythical kind of creatures, from different ecosystems, are interrelated there. So
I'm wondering, how much do you obviously success helps any organization, any market, especially newer organization. Being successful early is a big deal, but making pretty early on, making back-to-back Calder Cup finals, how much do you think that's helped even further grow that franchise? Or do you think that it was always going to be successful? I mean, you talked about how it's kind of a unique situation in a lot of ways. There aren't really any other pro sports teams out there. Do you think the success kind of just boosted that a little bit? Was that a big part? In some markets, it's really critical, right? If the teams stop winning, it's a big problem. But I'm curious what you think for a newer organization down there, what you saw.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, there's a lot of people that bought season tickets, going like, "This is great. This is a new team. Let's have some fun with this. See where it goes." A lot of people have told us that we don't know a darn thing about hockey, but we wanted to see what all the fuss was about. And they went, and obviously having success on the ice and making it an exciting product has really taken some curious fans into lifelong diehards. I think if we came out and kind of limped out of the gate, it would have been very difficult to keep those fans. And instead, those fans who didn't know anything about hockey are telling the friends to come in and say, this is a lot of fun. You have to be a part of this. You have to come to these games. And we were selling out games later on in the season before, like, instead of earlier in the season. And then the playoffs were just magical, really. We played that first season. I don't know why we want to take every series to the brink, but we decided to play every single playoff game imaginable outside of the conference finals. I think we played 26 of 27 possible playoff games. But I mean, just the support in the arena, like, it was all anyone could talk about that first year, and we've kind of just lived by that as we've gone on.
And this is going to kind of connect because we're AHL playoffs are getting going right now. I think some teams it's a fascinating format, obviously, with each division having a different path and everything like that. But I think it's a really good way to start this conversation. The AHL is a very different league than it was when you played in it. As someone who you played in the league, it's evolved for various reasons. When you look at kind of your role in managing that team and what is the role of the AHL team now, and in which ways is it still exactly the same? In which ways has it changed drastically since you were one of the guys on the ice?
Yeah, I mean, years back, you're talking the even before I played, the AHL, the IHL, where we're competing leagues in a lot of ways, and it was kind of an older man's league, right? It wasn't, you sprinkled in a prospect here and there, but it was do everything you can to win a championship type thing. And that meant, playing all these older players and, guys that are destined to stay in the American Hockey League or the International Hockey League. And this first round draft pick that came in might be able to help us if we need them type thing. And that's where things have really evolved over the years. They've changed some rules with our veteran development, the veteran development rule, only allowing 6, certain games played threshold veterans in the lineup, where now it's turned into a real young person's league, where you look at our lineup, some of our top players are still on an entry-level contract. Most of our top players are on entry-level contracts, and it's the same around the rest of the league type thing. it used to be a league where it was kind of underfunded, and you're kind of scraping by, and you'd show up and you'd kind of play with the rest of your gear, and you'd hope to get a new pair of skates and and just kind of go from there. But now the development side of it has been so valuable to the NHL clubs that these organizations, and I'll just speak for ours, has really been a factory for the Kraken, where research and development is put in. We have a gym that rivals some NHL teams here. The players, when I played, you might get some cereal, and if someone decided to bring in milk that day, you'd have something to eat in the morning. And now, we have, omelet chefs here with full breakfasts and full lunches after practice. You've got pregame meals with a pasta chef, and they're all curated by our nutritionist. And, we really truly understand, the importance of the American Hockey League and the development of our future players, with strength training and practice times and travel and all that. It's just come so far in, I would say, a short amount of time. I've been retired 10 years, and it's not unrecognizable nowadays. But we truly understand that the one way to truly use your kind of financial resources from a National Hockey League level to really boost your team is through development and through the American Hockey League. Like the NHL has a salary cap. You want to go find a player in free agency, you spend the market price for them. You can only spend your salary cap. You can't get better than your salary cap, right? But the American Hockey League, there's no salary cap on developing homegrown talent, and it's really been it's really been a key part of the Kraken and the growth, and you can see with our franchise in Seattle. I mean, despite our NHL record, we do feel that we are a growing franchise. The cupboards are full down here. We've got players that have played in the National Hockey League over the years. We've got players that are chomping at the bit right now to play in the NHL. We've got the starting goaltender in Seattle, Joey Decord, spent his time down here, went to the Calder Cup finals, and now he's a starting goaltender up there. You got guys like Shane Wright and Riker Evans, and then we've got a laundry list of guys in the waiting here. So the league has changed so much. The resources put in this league, I think the American Hockey League does a great job of really making sure that this is a development league and not that old time league that it used to be, where guys were out there beating the heck out of each other and hoping to survive. So,
well, okay, really quickly, is Cole Lind one of the most hated players in the AHL? Is he one of the best people at getting under people's skin? Because I've talked to a couple people in the AHL, like he played for Texas last year too. But I think I know he was in Coachella Valley before that. And I think went on one of those Calder Cup final runs with you guys. And it seems to me almost every game I've watched him play, at some point there's someone from the other team who has to be held back from going after him. Is he just one of the it's not the old league that it used to be, obviously, but there's still a place for maybe some of that antagonism. And it seems to me like he's one of the better players at doing that.
He's one of the best at it. He was an excellent player for us. I mean, what was good about Cole Lind is he was such a great goal scorer too. Like he had a great shot and he was very hungry around the net, but which made him more hated, I believe. Yeah.
Yeah. It's worse when that's the guy that scores.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Exactly.
What's the is it reached kind of the, I guess for lack of a better word, the arms race when it comes to facilities at the AHL level? So like early in April, I was out in Vegas for the Frozen Four, and because I'm a psycho, and instead of enjoying the Friday night between to enjoy Vegas, I went to go watch Henderson and Bakersfield combined for 15 goals or whatever at that building that the Silver Knights play out of. And you kind of look at the buildings that are kind of as they've gone up when it comes to you guys are a brand new team. You got to kind of jump into it right away and kind of look at this. But what are some of the things that maybe even in the last couple of years you've realized that, hey, this is something that we want to have for our players that help us get ahead that maybe wasn't on that list in 2021? Anything like that you've kind of learned on the fly, I guess, in the last 4 years?
Yeah, I mean, there's still, some teams that play out of, buildings that have been around since, the 60s and what have you. But, we started fresh here. That was kind of we didn't have a choice. We came to the Coachella Valley. There wasn't an arena here. There wasn't even another sheet of ice. We had to build the game rink and the practice rink. That's another thing I could boast about is our practice facilities in the same. It's just, out one door we're in the practice facility, out the other door we're on the game sheet, and our players never leave this arena. Like I said, we don't really have a choice. There's nothing else here, but that's, it's something that was super important to us. Like Ron Francis started the organization as general manager. Everyone looks at Ron Francis as the one of the top NHL players of all time. And what people don't understand is he didn't just jump into being a general manager and an executive. He started, getting his feet wet in player development and really learned all the roles that made him a successful general manager. And he understood the importance of development. And he really helped us get started down here with, understanding the importance of making sure that the facilities were in proper shape. And, there was spaces built out for us in a lot of ways. And we had an adequate locker room and he was, all hands on deck for that. So it was, there is a bit of an arms race, but it's still not, full bore where it's like, all right, here's a blank check, get what you need. It's still a league where, we'll get you a budget and fit into this budget the best you can. But I don't think there's a lot of teams racing to build brand new facilities to make sure that they, that their American Hockey League is fully taken care of. But that was the luxury that we had, and it's been not only a successful franchise, successful situation for us, but Acrisure Arena itself has been a successful building in itself. So, because of us, but because of also the shows and the programming here as well. So it's been a good situation for all.
You talked about Ron Francis putting the work in, so I want to give yourself some credit here because you finished playing, you go into scouting for Toronto. I think eventually you get to, I already messed up your title once today, but you eventually get to the director of pro scouting for Toronto before heading over to Seattle. I want to take, so in about the past 11 years or so, when you go from playing to getting into scouting, kind of take me through that journey for you and why that was the right fit and how it kind of led to here eventually.
Yeah, I retired maybe a little bit early. I was 30 years old. My wife and I are having our first child, and she was starting her career in LA. And at that time, there was no teams in California. I think that was actually the first year that they're coming in. But I'll just be brutally honest. I saw my career kind of on its downwards kind of swing, and I didn't want to miss out on being a dad and being there for my family. And I was very happy with where my career was at and decided to hang them up. And as soon as my last day of playing, I had my exit meeting and asked for a scouting job. And I was very fortunate to get it and could do it from LA, and quickly realized that I really love staying in the game. I didn't join scouting because I thought that was going to be my life after hockey. It was more like, hey, let's get a job here because I need an income and we'll kind of see how this goes. And go to my first few games, I realized, man, I just love being in the game. And so that led to 3 years of regional scouting. And when Kyle Dubas took over in Toronto, I was promoted to director of pro scouting. It was really rewarding just being in charge of the scouts do all the trades and free agency and really being in there kind of hands-on in meetings and during an important time for the Toronto Maple Leafs. And from there, obviously, Ron Francis was my coach in Carolina when I played there. So there was the connection there and brought me over here. So, I mean, I really enjoyed scouting. I think it was a really good skill set for me to build for, to really take over this job. And it was something I needed to do before coming in here. But I really enjoyed working for the Leafs, working in scouting, and just I really enjoyed being an expert at all the NHL players and AHL players, and it was fun talking to people. And they go, "How do you know that about that player? How did you know he's this player's birth date and birthplace and all of his stats?" But it was really fun.
You can't really turn that muscle off, can you? Like you mentioned Ron Francis. I've talked to Jim Nill a lot, himself a big time former scout. It seems like once you develop that muscle, you're always kind of looking through that lens at players, right?
Absolutely. I even as a manager, sometimes I struggle to turn it off. To sometimes I got to put a kind of a coach's cap on and look at systems and stuff like that, and I just want to follow players around and look at them and the routes and kind of what they're doing, their hands and what they just kind of what they do on the ice. And I'll take a pause from the bigger picture sometimes and have to kind of refocus. But I think I'm more trained in a scouting eye, and that's kind of where I'm at.
Has it evolved too? Because one of the great slogans that we hear all the time is the game's never been faster, right? And we see it's pretty obvious if you go and watch. Last week or a couple weeks back, I was over back in Toronto, and I'm watching OHL Cup, and it's 15-year-olds, and they're playing, and the level of hockey for that is worlds better than you would ever expect for 15-year-olds when you think about it. And so with players and younger players being as skilled as they are, the skating, so many of the physical tools arriving quicker, has that changed how you scout at all? Has that changed how you kind of diagnose with it? Or like what has it kind of changed with kind of that base level of skill rising like it has within the game?
Yeah, I just think, skating is just such a big part of it, but that you can't ignore, you have to be able to keep up. Like I think way back you could survive as a slower player. You could survive just being skilled and methodical out there. Those players are getting left behind now. You can't be slow. You can survive, maybe not fast, but you can't be slow. What's interesting now too is, these players are getting so fast, so skilled. It's like, do the brain and their hockey sense and their processing keep up with all this skill? I think hockey at the youth level is breeding so many, skaters and skilled players, that it's almost becoming more individual, right? Where these players can wow you in say warm-ups, right? With all the stuff they can do, and they're throwing the puck around and flipping it up and catching it and stuff like that. But I find there's more individual talent than there ever was, and less kind of team talent. But like you hit it on the head, where the game's never been faster. I'm surprised that the skill is kept up with the speed, and guys can not only play at such a fast pace, but make plays at that level as well. And they can hit the tape, they can skate and shoot and pass, and all in speed. And now these guys are seeing plays that I don't even see from a bird's eye view. So it's really impressive just where the game is going. I don't think it's not only never been faster, but it's never been this exciting either.
I had one more. I know we're kind of past the point of talking about your playing career, but something that caught my eye when looking back at your playing career that I didn't recall back when you were playing is that you played for Randy Carlyle in two different places, I think, right? Anaheim and Toronto. Is that a coincidence? Did Randy Carlyle, the lovable, soft-spoken Randy Carlyle, just love you that much that he went out and got you when he was in Toronto? what's it like when you know a coach from a former stop and then you're on a pretty different team and you have the same coach? What was your relationship with Randy Carlyle like in those two seasons?
I had a good relationship with Randy. You know, Randy was pretty rough and gruff, and he'd come in the mornings, and he wasn't the guy that sit down and have a coffee with you and chit chat. But Randy knew what he wanted out of a player, and he wanted hard work, and he wanted to compete, and you know, he wanted to know what he was going to get out of you. And I think I was that type of player. Like I was a shut my mouth, go out there, play as hard as possible, you know, physical, hit, fight, come off the bench. Yes, sir. Can I have another type thing? And I think Randy appreciated that out of me when I was in Anaheim, and then a couple years later looking for a job, and Randy was in Toronto. But the other common factor there was Dave Nonis, who was in both organizations as well. So Dave had that comfort level. So did Randy. So there was kind of both of that, and you know, it helped me going into training camp, obviously in Toronto, having that familiarity. But I had a chance to you know, kind of have a leg up on that first impression type thing. And in Toronto, I got lucky that there was a couple injuries. There was the famous David Clarkson 10-game suspension when he went after John Scott, and that opened up a spot in the lineup. So yeah, I got to make the team opening night, which was unexpected. But I really enjoyed my time with Randy. You know, it's I'm not going to sit here and say we're best of buds and call each other all the time, but I thought he was a very good coach. He certainly had his way of doing things, but we got along great.
I'm going to stick with your playing career, but I'm going to go earlier, because in about 3 or 4 weeks now, I'm flying out to Kelowna for the Memorial Cup. And you have some experience with Memorial Cups and Kelowna. I think you played in 3, won 1, I think, and played in 2 others. And so I'm assuming the top memory is going to be winning the whole thing, but I know the 1 year was also the lockout year, and you played in one in a talent-wise one that was considered one of the best of all time. And so I kind of want to open it up with that so I can remember this before I head to Kelowna there. What for you, Memorial Cup-wise, stands out memory-wise, and then just be prepared. I'm going to ask you for my restaurant recommendations on the way out too.
Gosh, I mean, the city's changed so much since I've been there last, but you know, there's a couple mainstays there. But I mean, I was so blessed with such a great junior career. I mean, the first year I played in Kelowna, we went to the Memorial Cup in Quebec City, and you know, we lost in the semifinals to Gatineau that year. It was, you know, I was, you know, a 4th line rookie, and I think I played in 2 of the 4 games, and thought we had a really, really good team, but I think Kitchener ended up winning it that year. Then the next year we actually hosted the Memorial Cup in Kelowna, so the Memorial Cup's going to be in that same building. Our whole team's invited there. We're still playing in the playoffs, so we'll see how that goes with our team here in Coachella. But I think we had a phenomenal team that year. I think we set a record in the Western Hockey League for the least goals against, and we were just a defensive team. I think we had a 24-game unbeaten streak, like really, really good team. And then we ran into Everett in the conference finals, who were an expansion team that year. There are not a lot of players on that team where I think you'd sit there and go, wow, that's a NHL superstar. But we were up 3-1 in the series, and the next 3 games went into overtime, and all 3 were kind of fluky goals that, you know, flipper from the red line took a funny bounce, or a shot from behind the net hit a foot and went in. Another one from the corner hit a foot and went in, I think, and they're all overtime winners. We ended up losing that series, got a 2-week break, so got healthy, got rested, and then went into the Memorial Cup in our own building and won 4 straight. So all tight games. I think we were down 1-0 in the finals and ended up winning 2-1 in regulation. But that will forever be my favorite hockey moment outside of playing in the NHL. But you know, winning the Memorial Cup in your own building was absolutely phenomenal. And then next year we kind of thought, okay, we won the Memorial Cup, we're going to be good, but maybe we're taking a step back. We end up winning the league again, going to the Memorial Cup in London. That's the Memorial Cup I'm sure you're referring to with London, Ottawa being I think they were considered the host team, even though it was in London. London won the league, but and then Rimouski obviously with Sidney Crosby. It was, I thought we played 3 good games and we lost 3 straight there, but they were all really cool to be in those Memorial Cups for different reasons. But winning on home soil was outstanding.
And I know obviously the place has probably changed, but I will bother you. I will bother you closer to there for the restaurant recommendation or where because I'm excited about. Last one I was at was in Saginaw, which is a team that probably had a similar experience to your team when they won 2 years ago, where they got bounced in the conference semifinal and then played and won on home ice a couple weeks later after the break. Troy, last one before we let you go here. You guys have gone and in Coachella. It's been a really cool thing to just kind of help build hockey up there and everything like that. And you guys are in the playoffs right now. I'm just in this. I'm saying this jokingly, but it's true. Is because you've been introducing so much of that hockey market to hockey through the Firebirds. Is the AHL playoff format normal to those to the people in Coachella, as opposed is it something where you didn't have to go through the moment of, like, I was talking to someone from Grand Rapids the other day as they were waiting for a play-in series to end before they could play and everything like that. Mm-hmm. So like in Coachella, since you got to be there from kind of day one as the playoff format was built, is it just normal?
I don't think there's anything normal about our playoff format. And everyone always goes, well, why do you have 10 teams in your division? And why do they only have 6? And I go, you know what? It's just geography. That's about it. But no, it's we're the American Hockey League. We make it work. Yeah, it is strange, but we've we've given our fans a good education on it throughout the years. I'll say that. Obviously, going through. We've been to the finals twice, been the second round last year. Now we're in the second round and we've kind of gone 4 different avenues of getting there. And so it's been quite the education, but it's been a lot of fun and better than the alternative of not being in the playoffs.
Yeah. Well, Troy, I really appreciate you taking the time to join us in the middle of things going through the playoff. It's awesome. Hopefully things keep going well and we will, and I hope you are unable. I hope I don't see you at the end of the month because I hope you're too busy to make your reunion in Kelowna. I hope.
Yes, I'm hoping for this repeat success of Kelowna losing out and coming back and finding ways to upset. That's a long time to be out. I think they're going to be out at least 5 weeks or something like that. But no, I'm excited. If we're still playing, and hopefully we are, I'm going to be watching closely and wish the guys success, but if not, I'll be there cheering them on. So,
well, thanks again to Troy. I really appreciate your time. So, thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks, Troy. There he goes, Troy Bodie. I looked up some of those rosters, by the way, of those Kelowna teams you were talking about. Mm-hmm. Shea Weber, Blake Como, Troy Bodie. I don't think anyone on the other team. There had to be some guys who were maybe looking a little small on the bench. The coaches looking around like, no, I'm good. I put in my time. Thanks very much. I'd rather not go out there again. Thanks very much.
I think Mark Mathot was on that London team too. I think Corey Perry and Mark Mathot were on that London team. That was
last team standing wins, I guess.
Yeah, it was. That's one of those where I'd love to go find the. I don't know. I'm sure someone out there has video of the old Memorial Cups. So,
it's on some VHS tape or DVD at this point, maybe a DVD or something up in Canada somewhere.
Yeah. Another for me, that was another fun guest. Obviously, it was kind of cool for me to have us. We obviously had Bruce Boudreau on earlier. Bruce is an AHL Hall of Famer. it's been a little bit since Bruce had coached and played in the AHL, and obviously Troy with a little bit more of the perspective of the recent. And I really enjoyed that. One of the things I thought was really neat to think about, Robert, and I've known Troy since he was since year one of scouting for him, because I remember, as he said, he was based in LA. He was based in LA, and the Stars were actually on his list of teams that he was kind of scouting for the Toronto organization. And so I would see him both in Cedar Park and in Dallas quite frequently. And it's kind of cool I know a lot of people can be they don't give themselves credit for their success, but he's someone who I remember, you're talking to a guy who's 31 years old when he started scouting, and I'm talking to him for the first time, and you watch someone's career grow. You got to put the work in to get where you are, right? And I know that's one of the things that kind of comes to mind for me quite a bit when you look at players who do find those spaces. Obviously, being a player is going to give you a leg up for some of those opportunities. Like, we're not going to make any mistakes about that, but you do have to actually get into the management spots, to be the GM of an AHL team, to be in that spot. You have to put the work in.
That's why it's also funny in the playoffs right now, where you have a playoff series with Lindy Ruff, who's one of the longest tenured NHL coaches of all time, who's put in that work for literally decades, going up against Martin St. Louis, who basically got the job with zero experience, being a head coach at any professional level. And yet, they're both in those positions, but coaching is a little bit different, I think, than managing and scouting and stuff, where there's a lot more. I mean, people always say the general and general manager means whatever it needs to mean in a given day. So I'm sure that there's a lot of stuff that Troy has to cover and do that he would not have been prepared for that first year, that third year, even that fifth year. But it reminds me a little bit of David Carl too, who also finished his playing days in the hockey pretty early on. At a relatively young age, and that has enabled him to kind of get some of that experience and grow and learn and become such a well-respected coach. And similar with Troy, who's basically our age. I think he's like 40, 41 or whatever. He's basically a millennial like us, and is already you look at everything that he's done so far in his career, it's really impressive.
Millennials Like Us was actually the second name for this podcast. That was the other.
Millennials Like Us. That'll be our spin-off movie review podcast.
But that would have limited our guest.
That's true. The Zoomers. We wouldn't have the Zoomers, Sean.
Yes,
we need the
correct.
Zoomers and the Boomers.
Yes.
That's what they say.
So I guess maybe that's a someday when we have branded segments and sponsorship, Millennials Like Us, we can sell a sponsorship for Millennials Like Us. Robert, this has been a fun week again. Always been a blast. Week 6. We did this. I did this from the level 7 of a parking garage to early start.
You've done a couple of remote broadcasts now. One from a hockey rink, one on top of a parking garage.
That one was the most successful, though. That was just, admittedly speaking, that was a little more successful audio-wise and everything like that. We did get one quick interjection from children in the other room earlier while they were, I'm sure.
That's ambience. That's ambience.
Yes, debate. I'm sure they were debating how good Dad's show was. I'm sure that's exactly why there was a loud outcry.
I look forward to reading their YouTube review.
Yes. We will be back next week. Thank you to Bruce Boudreau. Thank you to Troy Bodie. Thank you to.
I keep doing.
Troy had because not every organization kind of has different ways they do things. Troy went and got permission from Jason Boudreau to do this interview. So Jason, thank you. Quick Jason Boudreau story. At one point, because before Jason Boudreau became the GM in Seattle, he was the assistant GM in Seattle, and he actually was based in Detroit, and I would see him quite often. And the date for those who don't know, there's a wonderful children's book called Dragons Love Tacos. Okay. And Dragons Love Tacos, if you flip through that book, the date of the taco party in Dragons Love Tacos is November 22nd. And I, at one point around that time of year, just took a picture of that page or whatever. It was tweeted like, hey, for all those who celebrate, like, happy Dragons Love Tacos Day. 2 or 3 weeks later, I'm in Detroit for a game, and I run into Jason Boudreau, and he's there scouting. And he said, how was the taco party? And so to Jason, who may or may not have seen this, especially now that Troy, that his GM down in Coachella came on our show. Jason, thanks for letting him come on. If you'd like to come on, that's my open invite. And we will be back next week. As usual, don't know who our guest is right now, but we will figure it out.
As always, we'll figure it out. Thanks for joining.